Okay, Zoe, thank you for joining Strategy Simplified. Do you mind just sharing a quick 1 minute introduction of your background before we jump in?
Sure. Thank you for having me. So my name is Zoe. I was born in Zambia to missionary parents. And whenever I say this, people always get confused and think, wait, aren't missionaries extinct? But no, they actually aren't. So I grew up traveling through many countries with my parents. So mainly Nigeria, Ghana, Zambia, Namibia, South Africa. But like I said, I was born in Zambia and we went back to Zambia after all the traveling. And then from Zambia, I came to the UK where I study at Edinburgh in Scotland. And I actually graduated in a month, which I'm really excited for because I'm just done with university. I'm so tired of it. And then later on in the year, I started BCG in London.
Lovely. Well, that is a really amazing story. I thought I'd been to a lot of countries just from moving from England to America, but I think you've definitely got me beat there. Anyway, congrats on the BCG offer. Can you just
Thank you.
also walk me through a quick high-level overview of the steps along that journey?
Thanks. So I think really it took three main steps, and I know this is already consultant speak where I'm dividing things into three. But I think the first critical step really was joining a university society called 180 Degrees Consulting. And I joined them in my first year, right? And I was the youngest on their team. I knew nothing about consulting. I knew nothing about business. In fact, in my very first meeting with them, they kept talking about like how to figure out the client's USP. And I was so confused. I thought they were talking about USB drives the whole time. And it took a while for me to actually raise my hands and just ask why we were talking about hard drives, you know? So I was definitely very confused, but I learned a lot through that. My time there was cut short initially because of COVID, but I think that gave me a good understanding and just a good commercial awareness to build on to really the second point, which I think is just applying for a lot of opportunities. So I kept applying for stuff like, I don't know about how things are in the US recruiting system, but in the UK, there are like spring weeks, which are like essentially early versions of internships for like freshers. So I applied to a bunch of those, right? And I did a few of them, most of them in finance. I did do one with Oliver Wyman, which I think got me thinking about consulting a little bit more as well. And finally, I got the opportunity to apply for BCG's mentorship program. And I think that was really what cemented the fact that, yep, consulting was the way I wanted to go.
Yeah, really amazing stuff, Zoe.
Thanks.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about this 180 degrees consulting. I know you took a big leadership role there. Could you tell me a little bit more about it?
Right. So 180 Degrees Consulting was originally founded in Australia, I believe. And the way they work is it's the world's largest consultancy firm that focuses exclusively on nonprofits and social enterprises. And I think their model is quite cool because they exclusively recruit university students. So it's on a volunteer basis. So they give university students the opportunity to gain experience in consulting while also giving back to like the communities. So they have different branches around the world. And they had one in Edinburgh, luckily. And like I said earlier, I joined in my first year, but I was a little bit inactive during COVID. But as soon as COVID ended, like, towards the end of 2021, I decided to take more responsibility there just because I wanted to, challenge myself and grow a little bit. So I took on a role as head of consulting and training director. And in the end, I'm so glad I did because I learned so much from working with others in the team. And I think just the chance to also be on the other side, coming up with the overall strategy for the organization was really good.
Wonderful. Really, really amazing stuff again. I really like the fact that they do have a business model where they can help the nonprofits based on the fact that they're using university talent for pro bono work.
Yeah.
So I want to shift a little bit to the recruiting process itself. I'd love to know what the biggest obstacle you faced in that process was.
Right. The biggest obstacle. Interesting. I feel like if you ask most people, they're going to ask what wasn't an obstacle on their path, because I think recruitment as a whole just tends to be daunting regardless of what field it is. When it's consulting, it's even much more so. I think one thing I faced was imposter syndrome, which I think was definitely big because I think like many other international students, I had this idea that I had to be this version of myself to get into consulting. So I couldn't be my natural self. I had to alternate the way I spoke, the way I acted. I had to maybe present myself in a certain way. And no matter how much you try to present yourself in a way that isn't you, it's gonna come out fake, right? It's not gonna be real. And you're also not gonna feel secure about it because you know that's not you. And so I think I really struggled with that initially, and it was really difficult. But eventually, I think I learned along the way to just own up to my story, right? Like, no one else has my story. Even if I have wacky parts of my story that don't really make sense to other people, it's my story. And I think I learned to sort of own it and try to use it as a way to stand out rather than be ashamed of it.
That is, yeah, really, really meaningful stuff there. I wish I could fully relate in terms of that, but I do know that I think a lot of people go through this consulting recruiting journey, and they do think, oh, I have to be this candidate, I have to be this person. But I think being yourself 100% is the way to do it. I think everyone wants to see you, that you're able to be organic and you're able to be yourself. So I guess with that, do you have any advice for candidates, maybe especially international candidates who are feeling that imposter syndrome and who can't bring themselves to fully be themselves in the process?
I would honestly say just do what you love. Because I think for me, at least, the imposter syndrome like kind of presented itself in a way that I felt that consultants were looking for superstars. So in addition to the things I already loved, right? Because I have a part-time job, which is in social work, which I absolutely love. And I've been working there for over 3 years. And I really loved that. And I really loved my role in consulting. But I felt like I needed to do so much more. You know, I've never really been very good at sports. But I really was like, you know what? I need to become the captain of the football team. I need to debate. I need to, and I just felt like I needed to do everything. And trying to do everything so shallow was even worse than just focusing on what I really loved, because it was draining to me as well, just affecting my mental health as well. And I think one thing that international students like myself, and I can really relate to this as I'm saying it as well, really suffer from is I think there's that tiny hint of lack of belief when people say, no, just be yourself. Because it's like, no, that sounds too easy. That sounds too good to be true. So I think it's just really just believe, like, honestly, I have nothing to gain. Like, honestly, be yourself. Just accept who you are, accept everything that has happened to you and that you've gone through, and just use it. Don't be afraid to talk about your stories. If you feel like your interviewer maybe can't relate to your story of, how you went hunting for catfish with your friends in the neighborhood, talk about those stories. Those are the stories that will make you naturally happy, and the interviewer will be able to feel your passion come through. And I think that's really good as well. I think that's a hack that many people don't know. Talk about what you're passionate about, because it will come across.
I, first of all, 100%, I absolutely agree with you there. But also I think there's an absolute level of that people who are interviewing, especially in consulting, they naturally do interview these, what we all believe are superstars. I think most people don't realize that they are a quote unquote superstar as well. But talking about those stories that make you and that make you happy, I think that they're the ones that recruiters and interviewers remember. And so I think being yourself there actually makes you stand out and makes it even more likely that you'll get to that next round or that you'll land the job.
That's true.
One other thing I wanted to talk about, I know that you mentioned being an international recruit. Did visa sponsorship play a role in recruiting? And if so, can you walk us through a little bit how that played a part?
I think for every international student, no matter how much some people might try to deny it, visa sponsorship always kind of plays a little bit of a role, because, I think just given our situation, we already have to be aware of that. And that's another additional consideration when, deciding where to apply to or which offers to take. And that definitely did play a role for me as well. And what that looked like for me was that I tried to get a list of every consulting firm I could find. And then I had to go one by one to just see if they had sponsored people in the past, just to verify that and come up with my own mini list. And for some firms, some smaller firms, this information wasn't readily available. So I had to try to email just to reach out, try to be proactive, which at first I was very shy about, because I am a very shy person. My friends don't believe me when I say this, but I am actually a very shy person. And so it was a bit difficult just emailing like, hi, thank you so much. This is amazing. I love your firm. I just wanted to find out this. It's not something that came very instinctive to me, but it's something that I pushed myself to do. And I think that really that affected a lot of my decisions, because there were some firms that I thought really looked good, but then finding out later on, no matter how much I really enjoyed it, I think I really needed that visa sponsorship. And I think one key thing to remember as well for everyone is, just because a firm has sponsored candidates before doesn't mean they always do. And I think it's also important to approach this with tact, right? Don't email them and say, hey, I know of this one person who you sponsored, so I'm sure you sponsor. Or don't bring it up in the interviews like, you sponsored this, so I know you will sponsor me. I think that tends to rub them off the wrong way. I think really just approach it with a bit of humility and just show that you're really interested in the firm. But I think just keep in mind that just because they've sponsored people in the past doesn't mean they always do.
Great. And those are some really good words of wisdom. Okay, let's talk about the case. It's in every consulting recruiting journey.
Yep.
And as similar as it is to everyone, it can also be wildly different in certain areas. Why don't you just walk us through what it was like for you with BCG?
Yes. So the dreaded case. So do you want me to talk about the process actually casing during the interviews with BCG, or just the prep casing process?
Let's do a bit of both. Let's talk about the prep, and then let's talk about how it all came together and how it ended up landing you an amazing job.
Right. Okay. So when I realized that I wanted to take consulting seriously and wanted to like make it my career, I was very afraid of cases. There's this one case online. It's a Bain walkthrough case. It's like readily available on YouTube. It always scared me. Now that I look back, it's a market sizing case. It's really not that scary, but it really terrified me at that point, and I just didn't know where to start. And I think like many people, I spent like my first month, I would say wasted my first month, to be honest, just reading textbooks on like how to case, because I think those don't really necessarily help. You can't really get better at casing unless you case and take feedback and improve, right? So I think one of the things I started doing immediately was I stumbled upon the Strategy Simplified podcast, and the live case walkthroughs were really helpful for me, because I'd listen to them and I'd pause them as they were going along and try to figure out what my answers would be, and just compare that to the answers of the candidates and take on the feedback at the end that they'd give the candidates as well. And I think this was very, very helpful for me, because I mentioned earlier that I did BCG's mentorship scheme. Maybe talking a little bit about that. The mentorship scheme isn't a route into the firm. It's more of an initiative to help people learn how to case. But historically, more people end up like going to other places after they do the mentorship scheme. It isn't a pipeline into BCG. What it is you will be paired with a BCG mentor who will dedicate 6 hours to you. And that 6 hours could be spent maybe working on cases or CVs or cover letters, whatever. You kind of decide. But in order to get that opportunity, I also needed to go through a case in my interviews. So that was just heavily Strategy Simplified. I was just learning and everything, all the good feedback I got from that interview that got me into the mentorship scheme were things I picked up from the podcast. For example, just stating back the question after you're giving, confirming information. These are things that I didn't really think about before, like just listening to and absorbing the podcast. And I think that definitely helped me. And the mentorship scheme was insanely helpful as well, because from there I was able to practice just a few sessions with a BCG mentor. And I think people often underestimate just how important it is to have someone who really believes in your journey and who is there to encourage you. And I think I was incredibly lucky, because I got an amazing mentor who was just there. In those few sessions, there was a time when I just was ready to give up, and I said, you know what, maybe I'm not cut out for this. And just having someone say, hey, don't give up, you can do this. Like, everyone goes through this stage where they feel like, nah, I'm not going to get in anywhere. And I think those words always kept ringing in my mind, right, when I went through the rest of the application process. When I reached out to other people and said, hey, I'm looking for case partners, which was also really scary, right? But I found case partners, and I was casing with 2 different people every week. And I think all of that really helped and contributed. And also very important, I managed to get good night's sleep before every one of my interviews, which I had never done before this. And I can't imagine doing those interviews groggy because you need to be on top of your game. So I'm really happy that I was somehow able to sleep. And I guess all of these things just combined and, through hard work and just continuing, managed to get the offer.
Yeah. Well, yeah, congrats on the offer. It seems like you're very structured in your approach, like a true consultant. I think it was the same for me. I think having that person to believe in you, especially when the imposter syndrome is at its worst, is just almost imperative to actually getting through this process. And so showing that resilience as well. And yeah, most people I've actually spoken to, formally and informally about this journey, have all gotten a good night's sleep before. And they've all done something relaxing before, whether it's having a bath and a glass of wine or going out with friends to have, I went out with friends and got a pizza and really enjoyed that. But I think there is something to it of just relaxing a little bit before the interview and then going in strong. I know you mentioned the podcast and absorbing that information. Are there any other tools or things that you would say other candidates should go out and look for when they are preparing for consulting?
I'd say really good case books, but I wouldn't really just say case books because I think there are a ton of case books that are from years ago that really aren't going to give you the best experience. And I think you really need to get good quality cases. Like I really enjoyed, using the case of the month, for example, which was really good because it gave me an opportunity to just go through like a curated and carefully created case. And just don't underestimate the importance of having like good case prep. And like I said earlier as well, really good case partners as well. Like when I had two people that I was sort of doing case interviews with a week, I came up with a system where I wouldn't be cased twice in a week. So one person would case me once and I'd case the other person. And that gave me the opportunity to kind of switch roles in a week. So I would be cased and then I'd case. And I think having that dynamic was good for me because it actually helped me try to see things from the interviewer's point of view so that when I was being cased next, I kind of knew that, okay, if I was the one interviewing someone, I'd want them to do this. So I'd do that, So I think just having that reflection and just being able to take a step back to look at things and just decide and come up with a good strategy, even as you're casing, I think was very good for me. Other than that, really, I didn't use too many resources. It was heavily based on listening to the podcast and reflection. And yeah, that's mainly what I did.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that a lot of people forget to do is, and I feel like I did it for the first 50, 60 cases I did where I was doing these cases and I was going, okay, great. I listened to the feedback, moving on. And I think coming back to those cases and really going over what you really could have done better and digging deep in the feedback and reflection, it's so important. So I'm glad you brought that up there.
That's true. And I think something that people maybe sometimes ignore is when you ask someone to be your case partner, it's a give and take relationship. So it's not just they're casing you. It's not just you who's in it to get something, right? I was lucky enough to have case partners who were also, really going for, they really wanted to get into all the places. So on days when I wasn't feeling motivated and I was like, let's case next week. They're like, no, we need to get those offers. We need to case today. And I think just having that mentality and having those relationships was really beneficial as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking back on the process as a whole, is there anything that you'd have done differently?
I think I would definitely have, embraced who I am a lot earlier. And I know I mentioned this a little bit before, but if I just sat down and just assessed myself and just realized that, okay, I want to be myself. I want to, embrace my personal brand and just be who I am. If I'm going to use a little bit of humor, let me use a little bit of humor. I think naturally the way I talk, there's a little bit of humor in it sometimes. And for my first few interviews, I tried to be so serious that I think I may have creeped out the interviewers a little bit. I feel like they might have been really scared off, And I think if I had just embraced that earlier, that would have been better. I think I also didn't really network effectively. So I did reach out to a few people and I got some good conversations from consultants and figured out a few things about different firms, right, that differentiated them. But I think I wasn't really strategic in the way I reached out to them. I wasn't strategic in the conversations I had. I wasn't also strategic in following up. So I didn't really know how to do a lot of these networking things. And I find that a lot of people in my position, just coming straight out of undergrad and trying to like break into like consulting, we don't really know. We're never really taught in schools how to like network effectively, how to build good conversations, how to carry conversations beyond like small talk, and that's something that I had to teach myself outside school, and in addition towards in addition to working on other parts of my application.
Lovely. And well, cheers to us. We're both graduating soon. We'll be done with college. But
Awesome.
Student to student, and I've asked this question before. What is one thing that most students especially get wrong about the recruiting process?
What I think this will go back to what I said a little bit earlier. So what I think students get wrong is they try to be cardboard cutouts of, stereotypes, essentially. Try to be the prom king and the football team leader and the president of the debate team, and try to do everything. And recruiters can smell that it's not real. Like, they can tell. Because how are you effectively able to balance 15 commitments and actually be fully involved in all of them? And I think another thing that, people don't really realize when they're recruiting is you really need to take care of yourself as well. Like, it's not a do or die. I think sometimes people forget that. People think they only have one cycle to get it right. Absolutely not. Like, I got into BCG, yes, but this is the 5th time I've applied to BCG. I've been rejected from so many of their internships. There was one time I applied for an internship and I got rejected within 10 minutes. I don't know how, but I did, And I think you just need to not have a do or die mentality towards a specific cycle. Yes, it's good to have that grit, but have that grit motivate you forwards rather than, weigh you down. And I think that's something that international students especially might be, a little bit guilty of, feeling like you have to prove yourself, feeling like this is your only shot. But really, life is a lot bigger than if you get that offer at that particular time. And I think it's important to just learn from each experience and do better next time.
Yeah. Lovely words of wisdom there, Zoe. Thank you. What are you looking forward to most about joining BCG?
I am looking forward to being challenged. I know everyone is so scared of like the work-life balance and all of that, but honestly, I am looking forward to being worked. Like, I have gotten so tired of university in the sense that I felt like I had very little to do. It's a bit strange because all of my friends are like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm done with uni. I'm so exhausted. But I'm tired for the opposite reasons. I'm tired because it's not really challenged me enough, and I've just gotten really bored of it. So I'm looking forward to, being challenged, working on a variety of projects, and just being around very interesting, inspiring people.
Lovely. I think you'll definitely be challenged, and I think that it'll be a lot of fun while you're there. I think that's one of the best parts about consulting, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all the questions, but as is customary on this podcast, I'm sure you know what's coming now. We've got a few personal, fun questions
Awesome.
that I'd like to ask you.
Okay.
So first of all, if you could have lunch with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Dead or alive? I think that would have to be Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So my favorite novel is 100 Years of Solitude, and he wrote it. And I'd want to have, a meal with him, because reading that book at such a young age made me develop this theory, which at the time I thought I was the first one to develop this theory. And I thought, oh my God, I'm so smart. But in the novel, essentially, time and nature is cyclical. So things kind of repeat themselves because people don't learn from the past. And I just thought, oh my God, this is so real. I'm like the first one to put this together, which obviously I'm not. But I think that is a philosophy that's always guided me. And I think that's why, even in my consulting preparation process, I really put a lot of emphasis on feedback and learning a lot from my mistakes in the past, because I really do believe that the past is always present in the present, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that's an awesome story behind that. And I think I wish I could make that lunch happen. That might be a bit difficult though. In terms of holidays or vacations, depending on where you're from, where's your dream spot? Where would you go if after a year of hard work at BCG, you get some time off?
I think I'm going to cheat a little bit with this one. But since I was born in Zambia, I'm going to say Livingstone, which is my hometown, but I have good reasons behind that. So Livingstone is the home of the Victoria Falls, which is one of the world's 7 natural wonders. It has very nice people and just amazing wildlife parks and just amazing scenes. By the time I was like 14, 15, I think I had seen pretty much every single wild animal, like live face to face, because the way the national park is, it's not really fenced. So sometimes the animals like wander into the town. So if you live pretty far in the suburbs, you're going to see an elephant. Like you're definitely going to see one. And I think it's just a lovely, just very, very wholesome, very picturesque place.
Oh, I love it. Well, Livingstone's now on my bucket list of places to go after that
Awesome.
recommendation.
If you're ever in Livingston, just let me know.
Yes, I definitely
I'm not
will.
there right now, I know. So if you went right now, I wouldn't be there, but just let me know.
Absolutely. I'll keep that in mind. All right. Well, last question. I was looking over at your resume and I saw a line that particularly interested me.
Okay.
And it talks about the fact that you actually wrote your first play and performed it in front of a live audience at the age of 10.
I did.
Before I even ask the question, I just want to hear about that, and I think everyone deserves to.
You know, when I tell my friends about this play, this is part of why they find it difficult to believe that I'm a shy person. But I really am shy. It was a one-person play. It was based on the DreamWorks movie Sinbad, Tale of the Seven Seas, I think. And I rewrote it to be more of a friendship movie about these people like essentially discovering each other's birthdays. And luckily, my parents had very understanding, very nice friends. And they had this party, and then my parents said, hey, like our kid is like working on this play. And they were like, oh, okay, our kids are interested. So like you can like go spend 30 minutes trying to like practice and come and show us. And I was like, okay. And so I did that. And I think it went well. Right now, looking back as an adult, I'm not sure if the applause was because it was good or out of pity, but I'll take it either way.
I love it. Well, in relation to that, I'm not sure if you still keep up with plays and that's something you're passionate about, but I'd love to know what your favorite play is and why. And you're not allowed to say your own.
No, it definitely isn't that one. No, it isn't that one. My favorite play is To Kill a Mockingbird. I saw Aaron Sorkin's version of it last year when I was interning in London. And I really, really loved it because I think that play teaches a lot about empathy, compassion, and the importance of moral courage. And it was really cool to see Harper Lee's work like on stage and to see how timeless her themes of hope really are even today, because you could really just make a few edits and it would be as applicable to today's society as it was in 1960. So just really brilliant piece of literature.
Wonderful. Okay, well, Zoe, that's all the questions I've got for you today. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I think not only did I personally get a lot out of it, I think everyone listening will really relate to at least one or two things that you've said here, and I think will really benefit from hearing your story.
Awesome. As always, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Hopefully we'll see you on again for podcast number 4.
Hopefully.